It's another episode of The Reset. Grateful that you're here with us. We got a big show. As you know, today is the NFL Draft. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that button for me. Ding. That easy. Brady Henderson from ESPN comes up next.
It's The Reset with G. Scott.
It's my good friend Brady Henderson. He covers the Seahawks for ESPN. He joins us on X. He's at Brady Henderson. What's up, Brady?
What's up, G?
Look, man, it's the NFL Draft today. I'm super excited. Everybody watching this is super excited. I want to get right to it. What are you writing about? What do you feel? What kind of vibe? What are the Seahawks doing at number 18 today?
Boy, I wish I could tell you. I mean, you could go with the obvious pick, right, that they're going to address their offensive line. The problem is this is a team that has never really made obvious picks, you know. I could say that because I think as long as I've been at ESPN, we've been doing these mock drafts, and I think I'm like 0 for 7 in nailing the mock drafts. But I have them in my mock draft, in our mock draft, I should say, taking an offensive lineman. I can say it right now, with Gray Zabel. But don't know if Gray Zabel is going to be there at 18. I don't know if he is there at 18. I don't, frankly, know if they value guards enough to take one at that spot versus, you know, if they would prefer to maybe trade back and address that position either later in the first round or with one of those 2 second-round picks. But the bottom line is, no matter where they pick it, they have got to upgrade the interior of their offensive line. I would say that's a fairly obvious point that everybody listening to this podcast has heard a million times, but guess what? It's true.
Right. The Seahawks and every other team, all 31 other teams are trying to address the offensive line. We saw what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl. We know that the trenches are very important. So let's stay with the offensive line. And let's say, by the way, I think that the Seahawks are going to address the offensive line at the 18th pick. You think that, and so do others. But one of the things I want to talk about is it has been said that John Schneider feels that he has the coaches in place. He has the players that are in place to have an improved offensive line. I want to talk about that. What is it that John Schneider sees within his staff or within the players that makes him believe like, hey, you know what? We're going to be better next season.
Yeah, there's a few things. One, a proven system, the Clint Kubiak system, which of course is an offshoot of the Kyle Shanahan system, and proven coaches and a proven coordinator, or at least an experienced NFL coordinator. And you didn't really have any of that last season, right? I mean, they took a gamble on Ryan Grubb, hoping that what had been a college offense and a guy who had only coached in college, they took they made a bet that would translate into the NFL, and it didn't. And I think as they see it, I don't think that they would deny that there was a talent deficiency up front last season, but I think they would also tell you, and I wouldn't disagree with this, that the style of offense they played put their offensive linemen in a tough position when you are dropping back as much as they did, you know, among the league leaders in like drop back percentage. And when you're doing that out of shotgun as much as they did among the league leaders, I think they were going into the bye, they were like had the 4th highest shotgun rate.
Right.
That puts your offensive linemen in a really tough spot when you ask them to hold up like that routinely in pass protection. So, I think between the coaches who have been around the block a while, John Benton is their offensive line coach. Rick Dennison is going to help out with the run game. Those guys have kind of been tied to Clint Kubiak for a while. And again, Kubiak is an established, not an old guy by any means, but you know, he's been in the NFL for a while. His father was, of course, Gary Kubiak, so an NFL lifer.
His brothers with San Fran.
That's right. His brother is the offensive coordinator with the 49ers. So proven coaches, proven scheme, and guys who have done it in the NFL before.
Okay, so outside offensive line at the 18th pick, a lot of the national experts, right? National expert and some of you fans, by the way, put it in the chat if you feel this way. But a lot of people are talking about wide receiver. Even Brandon Mebane, who comes on the show, I asked him, what does he believe? What does he think that the Seahawks should do with the 18th pick? And he said wide receiver. Brady, I don't think wide receiver. I think that has done, I think the skill position that they did in a couple years ago with Devin Witherspoon and then Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think that was skill enough. But your thoughts on the Seahawks potentially taking a wide receiver with the 18th pick?
Yeah, I could see why some people are going that route just because of the need there. You do have that your top two guys right now are, kind of a similar body type player. And that's not to say that Jackson Smith and Jigba or Cooper Kupp, for that matter, are pure slot guys. We've seen Jackson Smith and Jigba play on the outside. We've seen him, beat guys deep. So that's not to say that he's, a small guy who can only thrive in the slot. But I think without DK Metcalf and with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I should say, only on a 1-year deal, and he's, I think, over 30 years old, you do need a younger guy who can fill that big receiver role, beyond this season. I think MVS is that guy for this year, but again, over 30 years old and only on a 1-year deal. So I think people who are projecting a wide receiver to the Seahawks, they're probably thinking, okay, there's a long-term need for somebody who's more of a long-term DK Metcalf replacement.
It's interesting. Like, let's go ahead and start with DK Metcalf, and I want to take folks down memory lane. Like, first of all, I think in years to come, we will realize, wow, picking DK Metcalf was a big deal. Like, for what he turned out to be, got a second contract, and of course, unfortunately, he didn't want to be here anymore. But I don't think people realize just how hard it is to find that bigger receiver. Like, you don't replace DK Metcalf. Let's go. I love Sidney Rice. He was a dog in Minnesota Vikings. He came here. I mean, I don't think that Sidney Rice became the big receiver that I think a lot of people thought. I love TJ Houshmandzadeh. He was fantastic with Cincinnati. I don't think when he came here, he became that big wide receiver. I love Mike Williams. There is a history of, hey, most of the time, when you're trying to get that big receiver, most of the time it's a swing and a miss more than a hit.
Yeah, I think it's just a simple biological question here. Like, Pete Carroll always wanted to find those big receivers, but guess what? There's not that many guys who are that big and can run fast. The majority of the 4.3 guys are guys that are, 6 feet, 6'1", and under 200 pounds. So that's why Pete Carroll searched so long and so hard to try to find that guy. Signed Mike Williams. He flew Brandon Marshall in on a seaplane and then finally got Brandon Marshall when he was on the last legs of his career. Chris Durham. Remember, they spent a 4th-round pick on Chris Durham. Yep. They brought in Terrell Owens. The list goes on and on. Finally got his guy in DK Metcalf, but I think it took so long because the simple fact is there's just not that many human beings who are that big and can run that fast.
And by the way, when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, what was the starting lineup for wide receivers in the Super Bowl? I'll let you guys look that up, but let's be real. I think that little old dude with a chip on his shoulder was a dog, and guess what? He wasn't a big receiver. All right, so I still want to stay on the 18th pick because there's some people that have some ideas. I'll give you one, and I'm going to throw this out to you. I have been saying for almost a year that it is the running back renaissance. The running back is back. Now, we saw Saquon. The Giants got rid of him like a bad marriage. You feel me? And he went to the Eagles. And I'd say he was probably the main reason the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. They were really good with him. I think we see what happens with Detroit. We're seeing how well that happens. Run games equal success. And before, there was kind of a devalue on the running backs. They were kind of getting disrespected. I think it's back. Here's my thought. I believe coming up in this first round, I also, if there is a skill position, I could not and would not be surprised if the Seahawks were to go ahead and take one of these running backs that are in the first round. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put my bid in for Travion Henderson, Ohio State running back. But I can see it happening. Now,
no relation, by the way.
Yeah,
in case you were wondering.
Yeah. But I will say, I know that there are people that believe, hey, they believe that Kenneth Walker III is enough to take him to the promised land. Your thoughts about my crazy idea? Oh, I didn't even get too crazy in my idea. I wouldn't even be surprised if there's some type of package deal that is made, because I'll say this definitively. I don't think what the Seahawks currently have at running back is enough to win the Super Bowl. Okay.
So you're talking about maybe a running back at 18?
I'm talking about a running back at 18.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, because if you hit a home run, you hit a home run. I think the Atlanta Falcons feel like they hit a home run with Bijan Robinson,
Yeah.
right? You get a running back now, you can do so many things. You make the defense honest. A lot of teams are playing two high safeties. When they're playing those two high safeties, right, in that situation, they're basically saying you need to run the ball. If you can't run the ball, we'll stay in two high safety and we're going to have a good day.
Yeah, and I think that is, you hit the nail on the head right there. You're talking about, I think, why the running game in general is making a bit of a comeback. And if you look at, I didn't look at it at the end of the season, but the early trend last year was teams were running the ball more. And I think the obvious correlation you could point to is that the Vic Fangio two high safety defense is kind of becoming more in vogue in the NFL. And so if you can picture it, when you got two high safeties in the back part of the field, that means one is not down in the box helping out in run support. So teams that are playing like that, they're daring offenses to run the ball, and offenses are saying, okay, we're going to run the ball until you stop it. And so that's the theory as to why the running game is becoming a bigger part of offenses. It takes a special running back, though, still.
No doubt.
Right.
And the reason why I truly believe that there are special running backs in this draft. Now, the reason why I don't think the Seahawks, it's been said that Brady Henderson, Ohio State running back, would be going in the second round. Mm-hmm. And now you're starting to see and hear things kind of change a little bit. That's because you have teams like the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos right now, Sean Payton has his quarterback. Right? And we saw what happened. I know Paul's giddy right now. We even talking about this. But the Denver Broncos have their quarterback. Now they need that running back. I would not be surprised if the Denver Broncos go ahead and get Brady Henderson early. I think the running backs are that special.
There you go. And they're picking, what, in the early 20s?
Paul, go ahead and answer.
I actually don't know.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
But the bottom line is, I mean, I like the fit there because they had pretty deficient group of running backs last year and just weapons in general. So, yeah, I mean, certain teams, I know the analytics crowd really hates the idea of taking a running back that early because they feel like, it's, kind of like a replaceable position, which I think that is oversimplifying it. The thought that you could just plug in any old running back, and if the scheme is right, if the offensive line is good, that guy's going to get the same production as a much more talented running back. I think that is way oversimplifying it. I think we saw it here in Seattle that a special running back can elevate everything.
And also to remind everyone, the NFL is a copycat league, right? When trends start happening, everybody jumps on board. You wanted a big DB back when Pete Carroll was here because of Richard Sherman. Guess what? All teams started to go get a 6'3" DB. Now, here's what's interesting, and you probably noticed from covering it for the last 7+ years, is that there used to be a big deal lately about the wide receivers. There's so many wide receivers that have been getting drafted in the first round. So many wide receivers that have been getting big-time contracts. I have a theory. I think we're going back to the running back again because you take the Eagles, A.J. Brown, $30+ million contract, right? Where would A.J. Brown rank in the reasoning for the Eagles' success last year? 4th, 5th reason why they won. Hence the reason why Seattle is like, DK. I believe if Seattle was willing to give DK a new contract, I think he would still be here. I just don't think that that's the lane that the Seahawks. As a matter of fact, that's not the lane that a lot of teams are going. A lot of teams aren't those big wide receivers that they paid a lot, Brady. It seems like they're kind of doing away with those a little bit.
Yeah, and that was a weird contract that they gave A.J. Brown because it came right after they paid Devontae Smith, and it almost seemed like, oh, now you've got to pay A.J. Brown in order to make him happy. I mean, I guess it worked out for him because they won the Super Bowl, but I got a feeling that decisions like that are going to come back to bite you. The Bengals won't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I love Joe Burrow. I love what he has done, but I'm sorry, you paid 2 wide receivers. I'm not trying to count your money or anything like that, but I just know that's not how the game is won, especially today. Okay, one more position that's important. As we all know, I think you know this to be true. Over the last, 15 seasons, the Seattle Seahawks have drafted how many quarterbacks in the NFL draft?
2 quarterbacks.
And one was Russell Wilson, and one was my man Magoo?
Alex Magoo, that's right. 7th round pick in 2018.
Okay. Where are you at? I know you just wrote something up talking about quarterbacks in this draft, people want to know, is it possible? Is it possible that the Seahawks take a quarterback in this year's draft?
Yeah, I think it's possible. Is it likely? It's really hard for me to say that it's likely just because of that history that you mentioned. You also, again, 2 quarterbacks in 15 years. I think it's fair to say that this is a team that does not easily fall in love with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You also look at the depth chart and the fact that, they've got 4 guys right now. They are, even if they're not as good as they've been, they are as deep at that position as they've been in recent memory. And you also look at the fact that this is not considered a great draft for quarterbacks. But let's look at each one of those things individually.
Can you see the Seahawks trading one of them quarterbacks that they got right now?
I could absolutely see them trading Sam Howell, and I was going to get to that. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Sam Howell was very much on the trade block.
Yes, sir.
So they're not going to be 4 deep at that position for very long.
Okay.
I don't think. You also look at the fact that they have drafted 2 quarterbacks in 15 years. I think there have been some close calls in those 15 years. They also tried to trade for the number 1 pick in 2018. They tried to trade, or they at least had a conversation with the Cleveland Browns about sending Russell Wilson to Cleveland for the number 1 overall pick that year, which they would have used on Josh Allen. So had Cleveland been willing to play ball with them, their draft history in terms of quarterbacks would have looked a whole lot different. And the other, about this quarterback draft, it's not good in terms of when you compare it to last year when there was 5 guys that went in the first, half of the first round.
Sure.
I don't think that necessarily means it's not good in other parts of the draft. I think there's a middle class of quarterbacks this year that could be options on day 2 or day 3 for the Seahawks. So, and again, that always depends on how far does some of those top guys, how far does Shadur Sanders fall? How far does Jackson Dart fall? Because that obviously affects everything else the rest of the draft. But my point is, you could look at each of those reasons that would suggest they're not going to draft a quarterback. And for every one of those reasons, you could say, they are deep at quarterback right now, but I think they're going to trade Sam Howell.
Okay, I do too. So we agree on that. Can you give us right now, obviously the draft is today. Appreciate y'all hanging out. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Can you give us maybe a couple quarterbacks that you could see and envision the Seahawks rocking with?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 right now. Tyler Shuck is one of them. Now, again, all of this depends on how far the guy falls. I don't think they're going to draft Tyler Shuck in the second round, at 50. But if somehow Tyler Shuck falls that far, he is an older prospect. He's going to turn 26 in September. He played 7 college seasons, right? So the thing that's interesting about him to me is that, part of the reason the Seahawks haven't drafted a quarterback is they felt like, these guys need so many reps and so much development, and they just don't feel like they can devote the time to do that. Well, if that's a concern, that shouldn't be a concern with a guy who's 26 years old and played as long as Tyler Shuck did in college. Another guy is Jalen Milroe. And again, kind of a wide range of where he's projected to go. Insanely gifted as a runner. And I think the interesting correlation there is that Clint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator, is a huge fan of Taysom Hill, the guy he had last season in New Orleans, as kind of like a wildcat gadget option. So even if Jalen Milroe never developed as a passer, which I think it's pretty clear he needs to do, I think at the very least you could have a Taysom Hill-like weapon in Clint Kubiak's offense, which would be pretty intriguing. I mean, the 4'3" guy, well-built, you could work with that,
I think we're about 10 years away. Hot take coming up. I think we're 10 years away from not having slow quarterbacks, right? I think the game is getting so good.
Yeah.
I think defenses are getting so good, so fast, right? The fact that you can have a one-dimensional quarterback, I don't think that is going to last. Pretty soon, I think within 10 years, we're going to see you're a quarterback and you can't run, then you can't play on this team. In the game of football, every other position, you need to be able to use your feet. Now, quarterbacks use footwork and being able to, obviously deliver passes and all that stuff. But the fact that you can have a slow, like the Tom Brady's or Peyton Manning's
Matt
and all
Stafford's,
that, Matt Stafford's of the world, there's going to come a time that offenses need that threat. You need that defense to be on their heels a little bit. Any other quarterbacks? You gave us 2. Can you give us one more?
Yeah, I'll give you one. I think you probably know this guy pretty well.
Yeah.
Will Howard.
Okay, the Ohio State national champion, somebody who played at Kansas State, somebody who has played a lot of reps. Okay, talk to me.
And people might cringe because they may only know him from a pretty awful throwing session at the combine. I would remind you, Will Howard won a national championship. Okay, so if you're gonna get all up in arms about the throwing session, I would just remember that this guy quarterbacked the team to a national title and was the MVP of the national championship game. So the guy's got some game, even if he maybe had a bad day at the combine. You and I probably disagree on where he might go, and frankly, I just should have prefaced this from the start. I don't study these guys like the draft analysts do. I form my opinions.
You think he's going in the 4th round?
Well, I think he could be an option for the Seahawks, like early day 3. So yeah, maybe 4th round.
And by the way, let me be honest with you, and I'm gonna be honest with y'all. There's bias with me with Will Howard. You know what I mean? There is. There's some bias, and I'll tell you. I told Matt Hasselbeck, number 8. You know this to be true. I told Matt Hasselbeck last year around April. It was after the spring game. Met him and everything. I met Will Howard and all that. I told Matt Hasselbeck, he reminds me so much of him, right? And one of the things that Matt Hasselbeck, by the way, is the most beloved Seahawks in history. Like, people inside of that building love number 8. So if you're a big fan of Matt Hasselbeck, there's a reason, because he is Matt Hasselbeck is my favorite quarterback in Seahawks history, and it's not even close, all right? But what made him special, in my opinion, is, sure, was he a good quarterback? Yeah, you got to kind of be out there on the field. What made him special is his ability to lead, his ability to get along with all parts of the locker room.
Relatable.
And being relatable. That's what Will Howard is really good at. The quarterback is the leader, and not just not throwing interceptions, not turning the ball over, extending drives and 2-minute drills and doing all those great things. How is that quarterback inside of the locker room? And I'm telling you guys, yes, I'm biased, and I probably know Will Howard more than other quarterbacks. Oh, wait. Hot take. I'll take Will Howard 10 times over Shedeur Sanders. Yes. So.
And that quality that you're talking about there, here's how important that is. I think that's a big reason why they traded Geno Smith. Because of that, what you're talking about, that relatability and interacting with teammates. I think from what I understand, that was a concern in the building, is how well he related to teammates, how well he led those guys. And so the point being, if that's one of Will Howard's best attributes, then that could be something that really appeals to them with him.
Right. Okay, so we've knocked out the quarterback position. So these are all opportunities. We knocked out offensive line potentially at 18. Can we talk about the defensive line, the trenches? I'll tell you something that really stands out to me, right? The Seahawks drafted Byron Murphy II last season with the 1st round pick, which I love Byron Murphy II. Great player, great pickup. But something that's kind of confusing to me, and maybe you can help us and listeners and viewers that are watching right now. So you bring in Leo Williams, which, by the way, incredible. Love Leo. We all know what the big cat has done for this team. Jay Reed had an amazing season last season. You paid him this offseason, so glad to have him there. But Brady, the Seahawks now are having Byron Murphy II in year 2 coming up this year. What is the plan to get him more reps? Because I have learned from D lineman Brandon Mebane that the key for these D linemen to get better is reps. What's the plan there to get him more reps?
Yeah, and I think it's reps in certain situations. And I think that they would tell you that part of the reason why Leonard Williams had the season he had was because he got hot and they rode the hot hand. And they gave him a lot of those, kind of favorable pass rushing situations, those favorable pass rushing matchups where the design of the play is for him to get to the quarterback.
Sure.
And part of the reason I remember asking Mike McDonald this after the year, what do you make of Byron Murphy's season given, just the fact that the production wasn't really there. I think he had a half sack and not that many tackles for loss, which everybody expected more when you draft a guy, 16th overall like that. And that was part of his explanation, which was that they rode the hot hand with Leonard Williams, and they've got to get more creative to find ways to put Byron Murphy in those types of situations. So I would say with Byron Murphy, he had if you're just judging his season by a half sack and however many tackles for loss it was, you're probably missing the big picture there.
Sure.
He was better than that.
For sure.
Was doing some of the dirty work, playing on the nose sometimes, which, as we know, like when you're playing nose tackle, you're not really supposed to be the star of the show. You're supposed to kind of eat up blocks and do the dirty work. So, but when you draft a guy 16th overall, you really don't draft him to be that kind of player. You draft him to be a guy who gets home, and they've got to do a better job of giving him opportunities to do that.
We got 4 more minutes, Brady, and I'm going to ask you a question, and you can only answer yes or no.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Do you think the Seahawks draft a quarterback in this draft?
No.
Okay.
Good thing I wrote about it.
Yes or no? Do you think that the Seahawks pick at number 18 and not trade out of it?
Yes.
Okay. Yes or no? Do you think the Seahawks trade one of their players to help with their draft today?
No. But I feel like I need to give more than a yes or no. I feel like they could trade a player like Sam Howell. They could trade Sam Howell. But if they trade Sam Howell to the Minnesota Vikings, who I think would be a great fit, Minnesota's probably giving up a pick next year. They only have 4 picks this year. And that may not happen until right after the draft, in which you obviously can't trade a pick in this year's draft right after the draft. So I do think they trade a player. I don't know if it would necessarily be for a pick this year.
Okay. By the way, I like that yes or no with you.
That's good.
We got to keep doing that in the future. All right. Last question for you. This one right here is important. Now, they're all 32 teams would say, tell their fan base and tell everyone, this coming draft is important. No doubt. Everybody thinks this draft's important. On a scale of 1 to 10, you have been covering this team. You covered the team for ESPN. On the scale of 1 to 10, how well do the Seahawks need to get it right in this draft?
10 being they absolutely have to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like one of those where they can't have a 2013 draft.
Yeah. That's a great question.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Before you go.
Yeah.
9.5. This is pivotal. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's the 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 seasons. DK, that's a huge part that's missing on this offense. Geno Smith has been the quarterback. As a matter of fact, over the last basically, 13-ish seasons, you've always had the quarterback situation handled, right? You've had Russell Wilson and you've had Geno Smith. And then, of course, now you're bringing in my man from Minnesota. And sure, that's gonna be great. We're going to see how that goes down. But at the same time, I just think that this is that year that in order for the Seahawks to sustain the standard, the expectations. By the way, it's been a good 15 years, y'all. I hope you've been enjoying it because not many teams, look at the Patriots right now. They were winning for a long time, and now they've been cheeks. You see what I'm saying? So, Brady, I'm saying a 9.5, the Seahawks have to crush this draft.
Okay, I'll say 8.5, and part of that is what the consensus on this draft itself is that it's not a draft that is full of star players. It's got more solid starters than stars, and so I'm going to say 8.5, just projecting that you may not come away at 18 with an all-pro type guy. That guy may not be there at 18. Mm-hmm. So I think you've got to get starters in this draft. Come away with 3 starters, and with 10 picks and with with 10 picks and 5 in the top 92, come away with 4 starters.
Okay.
And one of those guys should be a Pro Bowl player.
Okay.
How about that?
I like how you did that. Love it. All right, man. Well, Brady Henderson, it is always great. I love you coming on. Obviously, the people love you coming on. You can follow my man on X at Brady Henderson. He does a phenomenal job of covering this team. Great friend of mine. How'd your golf game, bro? It's good?
Last 2 rounds have not been bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, not been bad.
Not been bad.
Okay. All right. And then Mike Salk. Who's better, you or Mike Salk?
I'm better than Mike. But Mike is from where – I mean, I've been playing a lot longer than Mike. I have more time to play.
Yeah. Is Mike a hack?
No, not at all. Mike's a good player. And if you see where Mike was when I first started playing with him to where he is now, night and day. He's gotten a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. Thanks, Brady.
Thanks for having me, G.
You.
I always love doing it.
Hey, hit the subscribe button. Let's let these Seahawks get busy in this draft. I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate you rocking with me. Love you for that. And as always, be kind.